explain that yoga is when you become really absorbed in enjoying something. So, for example, if you really enjoy a piece of music and you go into a place where you absolutely find yourself getting lost in the rhythm of it or in the beauty of the melody, that's very close to yoga. Or sometimes when we go out in nature and we see, a beautiful group of trees, or we see some rocks or mountains or something, and there's just something exciting about that, and it pulls our mind away from just moving around all the time. And it's just a moment of being completely satisfied or contented. So it's often when we have an aesthetic experience, which is an experience of beauty, that we come naturally close to yoga. At other points when you fall in love, that's very much like yoga. Or if you eat really good food, you can have a brief taste of yoga. So many people come to yoga having had many experiences of yoga just through nature. I teach Ashtanga Yoga from Pattabhi Jois. And this kind of yoga concentrates on the breath, making the breath very fine, deep, and comfortable, and then learning to move on the waves of the breath, and then learning to align the postures so that the breath penetrates through the body. So in the postures you're learning these movements that we call bandhas and mudras, and they help the mind to focus on the central channel through the body. Now the way I teach it isn't the way that Pattabhi Jois teaches it exactly. I emphasize, or I go way into the internal movement of the breath by using precise alignment in the postures. And in doing this, I'm mixing in all of the other yoga studies that I've had, in addition to my study of Ashtanga Yoga. And I think it helps people get a taste for where the practice might go. And as Pattabhi Jois would say, it really is in the breathing. And he is really, I think, trying to teach the internal meditation in the yoga. And I'm just very interested in that. So I try to start people out with subtleties of the breath that many other teachers wouldn't have the student wait 20 or 30 years to start exploring. So I kind of work backwards and inside out from the way other people teach. But I have to do it because it's what I do. And I hope it's helpful for at least a few people. Injuries come when the alignment isn't correct in the postures. But what I mean by alignment is when the muscular pattern that pervades the body that's associated with exhaling, called apana, and the muscular pattern that pervades the body that's associated with inhaling, called prana, when those two complementary patterns of intelligence don't work back and forth together, then one ends up mechanically moving in a way that hurts the joints of the body. And this is often done because people have a very outside view of what the yoga posture is, and so they're trying to force their body into what they think the posture is supposed to look like. And this has come maybe from looking at a magazine or looking at the person next to them on the mat. And of course, this is what people naturally do. And I think it's the duty of the teacher to try to give people an internal sense, and so that they're less aggressive and less competitive with the yoga. And then by getting them to breathe well, they start to feel what alignment really is, that it isn't just following rules, but it's breathing in such a way that the postures feel wonderful, even if you're stiff. But what you do need is attention, you need intelligence, and you need compassion. And of course, most people don't have any of those things. And so the teacher can help provide those for the student at first, so they minimize hurting themselves. But it's also inevitable that if you're enthusiastic and you're really trying something experimentally, you're going to occasionally crash and experience minor aches and pains. And from those aches and pains, you can learn so much. You can learn how to move intelligently. So, should you ever injure yourself practicing, which everyone will at some point, don't just quit, because all beginners end up hurting themselves a little bit. That's the point where you really start to move intelligently and compassionately. So don't be discouraged by the difficulties that come up, because that's when you start to really learn. I'm a little bit optimistic about the future. Though when I look at the world and I look at society and yoga society in particular, because I see a lot of that, I see a lot of ego games, which are the same old games that were being discussed in the Old Testament in the Bible, in the New Testament, in all the literature of mankind. You know, the same games are going on. But I also see that more and more people are communicating about their differences. More than ever in history, people are communicating. And so I think a unique thing about our time in history in terms of just culturally is that we have so many cultures coming together, and not just one dominating the other, but they're actually interlinking. And when you meet a new culture and you communicate, you actually reinvent your own culture. And in terms of the yoga world, I think the technology of yoga, though it suffers a little, due to the fact we don't know much about it outside of its tradition, because we don't know that much Sanskrit and philosophy. But gradually, as we're relearning all of the philosophies of yoga, and we're juxtaposing them to all of the other world philosophies and mystical schools, and we're doing it intelligently and critically, and I think we're going to get improved forms of understanding yoga. And so I think the practice is going to become more accessible to more kinds of people, because the teachers are going to get better and better, and they'll know what to do for each individual person when people come to them. So I'm optimistic about the yoga, although it might take a long time for it to really blossom. I think we live in a good age, because there's so many points of view. At least it's a creative age. So.